Hey, welcome back to Spinning the Past. Thanks for joining me. This channel is about everything hand spinning in a historical perspective. Today I'm going to talk about a very basic concept because I realize that not everyone coming to the channel is a hand spinner. There could be historians here, costumers here. I want you to understand what hand spinning is and what it isn't. For example, when I am demonstrating on a spinning wheel, people think that somehow if the spinning wheel makes the yarn, that all a spinner does is somehow present it and somehow voila, abracadabra, the spinning wheel spits out a finished yarn. That's not true. Also, I have spinning students who want to come and they think they can master hand spinning in 2 hours. That's not true either. It takes much longer to even get the basics of hand spinning. It's one of those skills that looks a lot easier than it is to do. So today, let's back up and let's talk what is hand spinning. So basically, the basic definition is the attenuation of some sort of fiber that has twist added to it that becomes a finished thread or yarn. That's it. But what are those fibers? Why do we add twist? I'm going to talk about that right now. So the earliest fibers that they know that were spun are actually plant fibers. And in that category would be hemp and flax. This is flax. And there are other nettles, etc., that they have discovered in archaeological digs. So plant fibers were the first ones to be spun. Here's just an example of, like I said, flax. You can see the length of it, what I call the staple length, is pretty long. But on its own, it doesn't stay together. I can just keep pulling the threads apart and pulling them apart. And that won't do if you're trying to weave a cloth that stays together. You couldn't even make a warp with this. So what hand spinning does is just adding twist. So on this flax, if I add twist to it, now it's a solid thread. And flax is interesting because it is the only one that I know of, the only fiber that actually has a name change from unspun to spun. So flax is the basic fiber, but when it has twist added to it, this now is linen. It's so interesting to me. So we add twist because we need to keep these strands of fiber together so we can work with them. Twist adds strength. Now here's another example. And this is more a modern, but this is, some of you knitters may recognize this. This is unspun Icelandic. This is called a plate. And it's unspun. So unspun means it pulls apart. Now, in some uses, that would be fine. I have a knitted shawl from this, and it works fine. However, not all applications does that work. So here is, when I went into our yarn store, they had something like this as a sample from one of these unspun Icelandic. So you see, beautiful sock. Love it, loved it. Wanted to make it. They sold me the colors that I needed of this unspun. First time I washed it and I wore it. See that? The heel has big hole in it. Why? Because it did not have structure. It did not have stability because it didn't have twist added to it. Twist adds strength. And anyone working with, especially in weaving or even in sewing, you need that yarn to stick together. You need that thread not to keep breaking apart. And that's what hand spinning does. It adds that sufficient twist so it becomes one continuous thread or yarn that is strong enough for what you are using it for. Most of the early spinning, most of it was done for a primitive weaving or a plaiting process. And those threads needed to be strong because there took so much time and effort, you can imagine, to process these fibers from its raw state to a finished spun state, and then to its next stage, whether it was weaving or plaiting or much later on was knitting, that you wanted this product to last a long time. That twist and the structure and the integrity of that yarn will give you that longevity. It will also add not just strength to that and longevity to that finished article, but the quality of the spinning will show in that final product as well. So the better the yarns or threads were spun, the better the end product was. This is why, even though spinning was ubiquitous, there were certain masters of hand spinning. Another thing I wanted to show you. Spinners love their finished yarns. So here's a beautiful yarn that I made. This is from a long wool. And as hand spinners, when we learn to make a beautiful, even ply, beautiful end yarn, we just want to hang it up on the wall and adore it and worship it because we think it is a thing of beauty. We love it. We think this is the be-all and end-all. And you hand spinners out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. But the purpose of hand spinning is for another project. So people didn't want just beautiful spun yarn. They needed this yarn to function in a different project, as I said, in weaving and plaiting and netting, and a lot of different very early uses of these threads were needed. So again, as a review, spinning is adding twist to a fiber to make it a stable, usable thread or yarn for another end use. Now, the craft in that is creating that thread or yarn that has that integrity, that is a consistent, which means is not lumpy bumpy, that will stand up to the rigors of especially the weaving process. The warp, which is the long threads, really need to be strong because they have a lot of abrasion on them. And just like this sock I showed you, that abrasion will wear down the threads rather quickly. And if they're not strong enough, then the weavers will be pretty mad at you because they have to keep fixing these broken warp threads. So the importance of a hand spinner and his or her skill is really crucial. And we are losing that ability or that skill, and that's what I hope to preserve in this channel. Yes, there are many modern spinners, but my work is looking into the past and trying to extract the history of those hand spinners. And I will be in other videos, I'm going to be presenting things that I have been reading and studying about the ups and downs of the spinning as a craft, as an industry. Often the spinners have no names, but without them there would be no textiles. So when you look at a textile, a piece of fabric, or even thread from before at least the mid 1700s, all of those threads were hand spun. They had to have some twist in them to be stable threads and yarns. And that's the magic of hand spinning. That is the skill. That is the art and the craft of it. And I'm hoping that you who have joined me on this channel will enjoy this journey as I try to unravel this really hidden history of all of these people who had to spin thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of yards of thread and yarn to create beautiful masterpieces or even everyday textiles. So here's to the early hand spinners, and here's to modern hand spinners who are interested in the history of hand spinning. Thank you for joining me today. Come back next time. Like I said, I have lots of other ideas that I'm going to be presenting. I will be presenting some of my research into spinning for lace, because that's my in-depth master's work. So stick around, and please comment, please like, please subscribe. I can't wait to share with you all the things that I'm discovering about the history of hand spinning. Thanks. See you around.